When I'm animating any type of logo, most of the times my aim is to find a way how I can reflect the brand's values with that specific animation, so the person who's watching it can get the feeling of what the brand represents. But in today's tutorial, I'm gonna show you a little bit different approach where instead of focusing just on the animation, we will use the logo as a screen that displays the video that tells the brand story for us. And I've used this technique in 2 cases so far, one for Puma and then this one for Adidas. And there are actually 2 techniques on how you can achieve this effect. I'll of course go through each of them in this video. I picked the Adidas version as a follow along for this tutorial because it's just a little bit more complex, so hopefully you can learn a little bit more stuff alongside it. Alright, let's fire Blender and start. So let me now show you the entire theory behind both of the techniques, and by the way, you can get the entire project file for free down below in the description. Just keep in mind that it's via the videos that we are going to be putting on the logos, because I don't think I have the full copyright to include those in the project file, so yeah, just make sure that you get your own videos. Alright, so if I add a simple cube and I immediately go to a render view, change the environment light to RGB and then set it all the way to black, and I'm also gonna add an area light and put it in front of the cube, rotate it, and if we go to a shader editor and immediately search for an image texture, and I can plug the color into the color of the emission, and you can see it turns pink because now it's waiting for the input. If I click on open and search for my video, which is this one in this case, for example, now you can see it changed the color because now the video is there, but of course it's not really reflecting at all. So that means we have to change the material of the cube, and if we go to new material and set the roughness to 0 and then metallic to 1, now you can see it's starting to reflect the actual video. So if I go to the area light again and I place it right in front of the cube, and I can also scale it, we are able to emit the video onto the face of the cube because we set the reflective material of it. And of course, if we would be animating it, we would just parent it to the cube, and then we would be moving the area light together with the cube, and we would make sure that it's always on this face. Alright? And for the second technique, I can actually do it straight away on this cube. If I go to edit mode and click on face and then select this face, for example, which is the one I want the video to be on, and then I go over here in the material and I click the plus sign, and then I assign it a new material. If I switch to material preview, you can now see the face is clear because it's waiting for a new material to be assigned to it. Click again on new, search for an image texture once again and plug the color into the color, then click open and search for my video, apply it, and now you can see we have applied the video onto this face. However, of course, we have to play around with it a bit more just to make sure it's fully aligned. So I can press Ctrl T and then apply a mapping node and a texture coordinate. And to be perfectly precise, we can go to UV editing tab and then right click unwrap. Now you can see I'm able to move this green square wherever I need, and also rotate it to make sure that it's fully aligned. And that is basically the entire theory behind creating these types of logo animations. Alright, so let's now create a new clean file and start from the beginning. As always, we are starting with a clear scene in Blender where I deleted all the default objects, and I can go and drag and drop my PNG file because in this case I'm gonna model out the logo myself because it's just 3 stripes and it's super easy to model out. But if you have a more complex logo, like for example the Puma one that I showed you before, that one is way more complicated to model it out. So you can go to File, Import, and import Scalable Vector Graphics. You can easily work with a curved version of your logo. You can of course give it some extrusion like this, and then of course you can give it some bevel. So make sure it's very low because it can get pretty nasty. As you can see, if I increase it by even pressing shift, but if I model it out myself, which is super easy in this case because again it's just 3 simple shapes, then I'm gonna have a little bit more freedom with the bevel. So for the sake of this tutorial, it's gonna be a little bit nicer. So I'm gonna delete it, make this appear again. So I have the PNG file, and I'm gonna press Alt, G and R to reset both location and rotation. Now I'm gonna press 7 to go to the top view, or you can press the blue Z over here if you don't have a number pad. And I'm also going to press 5, and that's how we set an orthographic view. Or again, if you don't have a number pad, just click over here. And I'm gonna position this one on the red line like this, and I'm gonna press Shift A and add our first mesh. Let's add a plane, scale it down a little bit, and let's start with this right part. So I'm just gonna align it over here, and I can zoom in a little bit more and go to tab, edit, and let's take this one, and let's press G and also X to make it move only on the X-axis, and align it. And let's take this one again, align, G, and again like this, and this one a little bit more, and this one a little bit more, like this. Perfect. Now I'm pressing Shift D to duplicate it. Again, I'm pressing X to move it only on the X-axis. Let's align it one more time. Tap to edit mode. Let's take these two vertices, bring them up like this, and then Shift D, again X. Let's move, tap. Let's take these two vertices, G to move them, and let's align them to the top like this. But again, if you have a more complex one, then feel free to just use an SVG version. It's gonna be way easier and you're gonna save a lot of nerves, alright? Now we can go and hide by pressing H our PNG logo, and we can zoom out a little bit, and let's take all of them, R, X, and type 90 to rotate it 90 degrees, so we are fully aligned. I'm gonna press 5 on my number pad again to set the perspective view, and we can finally give it some thickness. So let's press A to select all of them, and tap, edit, again A to select all the vertices. And if I press E, you can see now I'm able to extrude it, something like this. I think that should work. Yeah, this is fine. And now we have applied some thickness to our logo. Awesome. Let's go back to object mode. So if I press A again to select all of them, and I press Ctrl or Command A and hit on scale, and actually let's apply all transforms, that's fine. And we can test out our first bevel. So if I go and search for a bevel, and let's decrease this, let's say 0.2, and give it 3 segments, and let's also right click shade smooth. We've just applied a nice bevel. So if I select all 3 of them with this one as the last one, and I'm gonna press Ctrl or Command L, and I'm gonna search for copy modifier, so you can see we've just applied the same bevel to the other 2 parts as well. So we will use this variation as the sort of outline for our logo for the screens, and now we have to create another variation which is actually gonna display the video. So let me show you what I mean. So if I select this one and press Shift D and right click to duplicate it, also our object origin is still over here in the world origin, so I'm gonna right click, set origin to geometry. If I'm gonna press 1 on numpad and also 5 if you are not in a photographic view, I'm gonna press over here in the wireframe. Let's press tab to go to edit mode, and basically what I wanna do is now scale it up and make it fit inside the bigger part. If I take these 2 top vertices, you can see we have to move them slightly closer to the top of this part, and to be perfectly precise, I'm gonna change the orientation over here from global to normal. Now you can see it changed these arrows based on the shape. So if I press G and Z, you can see now I'm able to move it up based on the 2 vertices, how they are aligned. So let's put it just slightly closer like this, and then let's do the same with these 2. Unfortunately this one doesn't work, the normal alignment, so we have to be somewhat precise ourselves like this. And if we preview it, I can go back to solid view, and if I scale it by pressing S and Y, then you can see I'm bringing it up like this. So let's put it somewhat like this. I think this is fine. And let's also increase the bevel of this bigger part to, let's say, 0.6. Yeah, I think this works great. So we just add a little bit more of a variety. And let's do the same with these other 2 parts. So click this one, Shift D, right click, wireframe mode, then let's press 1 on our number pad, make sure you're in orthographic view. Let's also right click to set the origin to geometry. So we are scaling it down from the middle, and let's press S to scale it. Again, go to edit mode. Let's take these 2, bring them up like this, and then these 2 lower, closer to the bottom edge. Perfect. And I made a mistake. I should have scaled them on y-axis all at the same, so they have the same thickness. But yeah, I made a mistake, so let's try to match the thickness of the biggest part. So if I zoom in, you can see here we still have 2 lines, so let's try to match that. So if I go back to solid view, you can see over here at the bottom that it's matching nicely. Perfect. And all we need is, again, increase the bevel of this part, so it was 0.6 like this, and we are done with the second part. So let's do the smallest, and Shift D, right click, then set the origin to geometry, and again wireframe 1, and let's scale it So let's take these two vertices, and I'm actually gonna switch it back to global. And let's first focus on the bottom ones. So let's align them, and then we just need to clean up these ones. So somewhere here, and then this one somewhere here. Perfect. Let's press free on the number pad, and again, because I made this mistake, let's just match the thickness of the other two parts. Back to solid view, click on this one, and let's give it 0.6 so it matches. Alright, so that is the logo model out. Next thing we are gonna do is click on the smaller shape and then the bigger one, and then press Ctrl or Command P, and let's set a parent. So then we can just animate this bigger part, and then the smaller one is gonna follow. So let's do the same with these ones. Ctrl or Command P, set object parent, and then the same one. I'm gonna select this part, and let's go to edit mode, and actually the face one, let's select this face and press Shift S to move the world origin to the face. And now if you go back to object mode, now the world origin is over here at the bottom. And if I now right click and set the origin to 3D cursor, now you can see we set the origin over here. And the reason for putting it here is because we will be putting them on the poles, and the poles are gonna be, of course, connecting at the bottom over here. So it wouldn't make sense to have the origin in the center of the geometry, because then we would have to be moving the pole as well, and that wouldn't make sense. That's the point of having the pole, right? And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here. So let's go to face edit mode, then Shift S to face, back to object mode, right click, origin to 3D cursor, and then the same with this one, face, select, Shift S to face, object, and then right click, set origin to 3D cursor. Perfect, it's time to start building the environment and model out the poles. So let's select all three of them, and I'm gonna put them slightly higher. Let's reset the world origin because now it's here, so Shift S and to origin. Now Shift A, add a plane, and press S, and let's scale it up quite a bit. And this plane is of course gonna be our ground, alright? And we can start modeling out the poles. So I'm gonna press Shift A, and I'm gonna use a circle for that, and let's scale it down quite a lot. I'm gonna press 1 on my number pad to align it. And the design of these poles is totally up to you, like you can keep them straight just like this, or if you wanna give them some variety, then feel free to do so. I'm gonna do that just for the sake of this tutorial. So let's scale it a little bit more by pressing S and then E to extrude. And if I scale this one, and maybe let's extrude it again, but this time right click, and let's put it a bit down like this, maybe scale it to match the thickness, and then again extrude, but this time let's put it, and then this part is too wide, so let's select all of them and scale them inside like this. And by the way, I'm pressing Alt to select all the top vertices like this, and then let's give it more. Here we can scale it down, and maybe over here, and then let's just put this one up a little bit higher, again scale it up, and then extrude like this. I think this is totally fine. And let's give it 3 levels of subdivision. So Control or Command 3, or just go to modifiers over here and search for subdivision. And let's give it 3 levels in the render, and let's just give it some loop cuts. So again, edit and Control R and let's move this one. Then let's add another one here, just to make the edge a little clearer. I can actually scale it just a bit more as well. And then I think here is fine, we don't need any more loop cuts. Maybe let's put one here so it's somewhat lower over here. And then maybe this part, again pressing Alt, I'm just gonna scale it a little bit, maybe a bit too much. Awesome. And then right click, shade smooth, and we have the pole. And if I click on this part, you can see the origin is over here, which is almost in the middle of this pole, but we just have to move it a little bit more to the left like this. Yeah, now it's in the middle. And let's just duplicate it for the other part. So Shift D, X to move it on the X-axis. And let's just double check. Alright, this one should be a little bit more to the right, and just a bit more. Obviously these poles are not gonna move at all, so it doesn't have to be super precise. That's totally fine. And a bit more. Awesome. And we just have to put the logo on the poles, so 7 on the keyboard, and then let's just move these ones on top, just like this. So if I just try to rotate, for example, this one, you can see it's rotating nicely on this middle pole, which is great. So with the base theory that I explained at the beginning of this video, we can go and apply our videos. And as you know, we have now two options. So we can use an area light and then emit the light on top of the logo, or we can apply it as a texture. So in this case, the texture is gonna be way better, because if I try to add an area light, you can see the rectangular shape of the area light doesn't really allow us to make it fit the shape of the logo. Of course, we could rotate it to make it fit, but then the video itself would rotate with that as well, and then we would have to fix that one as well. So it's a bit tedious process. So applying it as a texture is a much easier and better choice in this case. I would say in general, if the logo is just one full shape, then you can use the area light quite easily. But when the logo is made of more parts like this one, then yeah, it's much easier to use an image texture. So let's do that. So first of all, I'm gonna select this inner part of the biggest stripe, and let's apply a new material. We can also bring up a shader editor. Let's switch it to shader editor, like here. Press N to disable this window, and we can give it a dark texture. It doesn't really matter which one, because it's not gonna be very visible anyway in our animations, because now we are applying it to the back and also to the sides, which are covered anyway. So maybe let's make it metallic like this, maybe 0.2 on roughness and 1 on metallic, like that. And then if I switch to edit mode, click on face, select this face and go to material, click on the plus sign and then assign. Now you can see it again changes because it's waiting for a new material. Let's click new and search for an image texture. I'm actually gonna plug this one into the surface so we can see it, what we are doing. I still have to switch the color of my world all the way to black. Now you can see it's emitting light, and let's click open, select our video and apply it, and you can see it's super weird because it's very stretched like that, and it's very easy to fix. So having the face selected, let's right click and then click unwrap, and then go to UV editing tab, which is a dedicated workspace for this. I'm actually gonna switch again here to render view just so I see it, and then we can press A to select the entire shape here, and let's put it somewhere where we like it the most. So I think over here works best, and you can see that we just fixed the entire stretching of the texture, which is exactly what we need. So let's finish the setup for the entire node. Start frame 1 is fine, then let's give it, let's say 250 frames, and then auto refresh. Auto refresh means that it's actually gonna be updating itself throughout the animation. Add a mix shader and finish our material, because I want it to be slightly noisy, so I can add the BSDF into the bottom node. Then let's search for a noise texture over here and plug the factorial into the factorial over here. If I scale it a little more, let's give it 10, and let's also search for a color ramp and plug it between the noise texture and the mix shader. And now we can make it more contrasty if we bring both together. Obviously this is a bit way too much, so let's leave the white closer to the right side, and the black one I think works really well. And let's also increase the roughness all the way to 1, and maybe increase the detail to, let's say, 4, and we just apply this noisy texture on top of our video, which makes it look a little bit more natural. So let's apply this texture to the other two stripes as well. So let's click this one, and then this one as the last one, and then if I press Ctrl or Command L and I link materials, however it's black because we haven't assigned the material to the specific faces. So let's go to edit mode, face, select the face, then in material preview click on this one and assign it. You can see it immediately applied. Let's also click on this button to copy the material, otherwise we would apply the same video to all 3 other objects. So let's click on this one and apply our second video, which is this guy doing push-ups. And as you can see, it's a little bit stretched once again, so we just have to go to select the face, right click and then unwrap, and if we go to UV editing tab, let's click on this button and then just click on it. So we have the full visibility where we are moving this part, and let's move it slightly over here so it's visible that the guy is doing push-ups. Awesome. So let's do the same thing with the last one. Again, let's go to the face, assign it with the right material, and let's also copy it so we can apply a new video, and that's, in this case, it's this handshake. And let's also set the frames, so 250, and once again let's make sure it's not distorted, so right click, unwrap, and then UV editing tab, and let's put there the right video, which is this one, and then I believe this one we have to move and rotate like this to make it fit, and then let's just move it and scale it slightly. Alright, so this is how it looks so far, and let's finish applying the materials to the other objects. So let's press Shift A and apply an area light. I'm gonna put this one on top of our logo, something like this, maybe a little bit in the back. That's fine. I'm gonna probably edit it anyway later on, but I just want to see the material of these outer parts reacting to it. So let's make this outer part of the biggest stripe visible, and let's click on it and apply a new material. And this one, let's make it fully metallic. You can of course play around more with the materials, but all I'm looking for are these reflective edges at the top, like this one. So let's click on this, and this, and link the materials so they have the same material, like so. We can actually apply the exact same material to the poles as well. So let's select all of them, and then this one, Ctrl L. Now we have applied the metallic material to these ones as well. Awesome. And for the ground, I'm gonna use a blender kit, which is an add-on for materials, and there are many more things, but I highly recommend you to check it out. It's for free. I'm gonna search for a concrete texture because this is gonna work the best. And also, before we apply the material, let's make sure that we click Ctrl A by having the ground selected and apply the scale transform. So let's maybe select this one, and we very simply applied a nice concrete texture onto the ground. Perfect. And you can see the texture is basically repetitive. For example, these spots are in one line like this, and that's not what we want. So let's unwrap it the same way as we did with the frontal faces of the logo. So let's tap face, click on the face, right click, and then unwrap. And now we just fix the texture and there are no repetitions. And while we still have the shader editor open here, I'm gonna switch from object to a world tab. I'm also gonna enable the render view, and we're gonna add a volume scatter. So Shift A and search for a volume scatter, and plug the volume at the bottom of the world output, just like that. Now it's gonna disappear, so we have to decrease the density, and I suggest you to set it really low, so maybe let's say 0.08, and we can leave the anisotropy as it is. So now you can see the light rays coming from this area light, and that's gonna help us to make the look of this animation way more cinematic. And also because I want to add free spotlights as a metaphor for the Adidas brand. So if I press 7 to go to the top view, I'm gonna press Shift A, light, and add the first spotlight, and I'm gonna put this one somewhere around here. Then I'm gonna press N to bring up the values. I'm gonna set the X to 90, and then rotate on Z-axis onto the logo, and we just have to increase the intensity. So let's just try 1000 for example, and let's also decrease the spot size like this, so maybe 9 degrees. And if I bring it slightly higher on the Z-axis, you can now see we are getting a really cool spotlight with the light beam thanks to the volume scatter that we have set over here. Obviously, if you want, you can play around with the higher values, maybe the anisotropy you can test out if you prefer any type of look, but I'm gonna leave it like this. And let's actually increase the intensity slightly more, maybe 1500, and let's maybe put it slightly further from the logo. And let's also increase the blend to maybe 0.5 like this, and then we just need to duplicate it and put it somewhere here, and then one more time so it's facing the biggest stripe of the logo, which is over here. And let's actually decrease the spot size even more because the beams are over here already connecting, and I don't want that, so maybe 5 degrees. And let's also increase the power to, let's say, 3000, and the same with these ones, 5 degrees, 3000, and then this one 3000 and 5 degrees like this. Perfect. Now we are basically set up for animating the rotation of the logo. So let's go back to solid view. So if you go, for example, to a 50 frame, and I'm gonna set a keyframe by hovering over this and pressing I on my keyboard. Then I'm gonna go to the first frame, and on the Z value, you can now see I'm able to rotate it. So maybe 100 degrees. Again, don't forget to set a keyframe. And this one, maybe this one can be 45 frames long. So again, set a keyframe, go to the first frame, and maybe this one can be the other way. And the smallest one, let's go 40 for example, set a keyframe. Maybe this one we can exaggerate even more, something like this. And now we have a very simple rotation animation. So let's go to graph editor, select all three of them, and then having all of those keyframes selected, let's press N to disable this window. And I can go to view, frame all to see all the graphs. I'm gonna press A to select them, T, set it to Bezier, then go to pivot point over here and set it to individual centers. And if I press S, I'm able to make the animation more dynamic. So if I decrease the total frames to 50, you can now see it's starting slowly, it's fast in the middle, and at the end it's very smooth yet again. Awesome. And then the final step is just about adding a camera. So Shift A, add a camera, and let's put it on top. We can press Alt R to reset the rotation and press 0 on our number pad, or just go to the button here. We can also close this window already, and let's set our camera at the top, something like this. And if we go to render view, you can now see we have these 3 stripes emitting on our logo. Just one thing that I don't like is this area light which we put above the logo over here. So let's take it and maybe we can drag it outside of the camera like this and rotate it onto the logo, and maybe also increase the intensity to, let's say, 100. Okay, that's a bit too much, so maybe 25. We have these nice reflections on our logo. We can now select the camera again, press N to bring up these values. Let's go to the first keyframe. I'm gonna go back to solid view because just one thing to keep in mind for you, the volume scatter is increasing the render time quite a lot, so keep that in mind. Let's set a keyframe for our camera, and then let's go to 50th keyframe, and we can just zoom it in like this. And yeah, this is just one of the examples of one of the scenes, so you can now go ahead and create your own with different camera angles and positions and even rotation values for the logo and so on and so on. So feel free to experiment with that. One last thing I want to show you is changing the emission values for the video. So if we bring up back the window for shader editor, and we can just press Shift A and search for an emission node and plug it in between the video node and then the mix shader. And you can see now, for example, if I increase the emission to 3, you can now see the video is much brighter. So depending on the volume scatter that you set up, then you can play around with different emission values as well. And just some final remarks for rendering it out. We will use cycles, and we can set the frame rate to 25. Then we can also decrease the max samples to, let's say, 70 or 80, because truly the volume scatter is increasing the render quite a lot, at least for my computer. So yeah, depending on yours, you can choose whichever you want. The color management, I always prefer to change it from filmic to standard. And last thing, in the compositing tab, I also like adding a glare node, because you know how we have the reflective edges on top of the logo. We also have the spotlights emitting on the poles, so we can create a nice glare if you search by Shift A for a glare node and plug it between denoise and composite just the same way that I have, and then you will have a nice reflections with this setup. And rendering different camera scenes, this is my final animation. And that's it guys for today's tutorial. Once again, you can get my entire project file down below in the description if you still struggle to follow along. And feel free to leave a like or comment under my video. And yeah, I'm super grateful for all of you subscribing to my channel. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.